Welcome back, Army. Today we're talking about a moment millions of people had been waiting for across nearly 4 years. The return of BTS to the stage. And we're zeroing in on one person whose performance that night, and then again at Goyang Stadium a few weeks later, genuinely left everyone around the world completely speechless. The leader, Kim Namjoon, better known as RM. Stay until the end, because the most breathtaking moment isn't always the biggest one. So before we even talk about the performance itself, we need to talk about the stage, because this wasn't just any stage. BTS received special permission from South Korea's Cultural Heritage Administration to perform at Gwangwamun Square, the main gate of Gyeongbokgung Palace, one of the most sacred and historically significant sites in all of Korean history. This was the first standalone concert ever held at Gwangwamun Square. That alone made it a historic moment before a single note was played. And the person who was directly involved in designing that stage? RM. He said it himself. To maximize the symbolic space of Gwangwamun, we designed the stage with an open cube structure that ensures an unobstructed view. The key point was to frame both Gwangwamun and the stage in a single screen without either blocking the other. Think about that for a second. In the middle of massive technical preparations, in the middle of a packed rehearsal schedule, with an injured ankle, RM was still sitting there thinking about how to make sure the ancient palace behind the stage stayed visible to everyone watching. Not because someone asked him to, but because to him, Gwangwamun wasn't just a backdrop, it was part of the story. The whole production involved 1,075 people from South Korea and around the world. TV specialists, concert production staff, technical experts, and that doesn't even include the crew running 9.5 kilometers of power cables just to bring it all together. 9.5 kilometers of cable for one night. And the result? The 600-year-old palace gate and the modern BTS stage existed in the same frame as if they were always meant to be together. When those LED panels lit up and bathed the ancient walls in purple, red, and blue light, 100,000 people held their breath at the exact same time, and millions more watching through Netflix did the same. That was just the stage. We haven't even gotten to the man yet. 8 p.m. Seoul time. The lights go up. RM steps forward in a sharp black and white outfit, flanked by Jin, Suga, J-Hope, Jimin, V, and Jungkook. He faces the crowd, faces all of them. The 100,000 people who showed up, and the hundreds of thousands more who couldn't get in, and just says it, "Hello, we are back." Then Body to Body starts playing. Purple and red light sticks fill the air. Phones shoot up everywhere. Screams roll through Gwangwamun Square like a wave. But the thing that hit hardest that night wasn't the sound. It was RM's presence at the very front of that stage. Because here's what that moment actually meant. Almost 4 full years had passed. 4 years without BTS performing together. 4 years of ARMY waiting, holding on to memories, watching solo projects, and sending love across borders, while quietly hoping that someday all 7 of them would be back on one stage together. And on that night, all of that accumulated longing landed on one figure standing tall in front of a royal palace, opening the show with a rap delivery that music critics, who were there described as more mature, deeper, and more powerful than anything he'd done before. It felt like they never left. If anything, they came back brighter. Jin Lee, a professor of communication at USC's Annenberg School, called it flat out, the comeback of the century. And it all started with 4 words from RM. Now here's the part that truly floored everyone, and it's not what you'd expect, because RM wasn't perfect that night, and that's exactly the point. The day before the concert, Bigot Music confirmed that RM had injured his ankle during rehearsal. The diagnosis was serious: a sprain to the accessory navicular bone, a partial ligament tear, bruising on the talus, inflammation, the works. The medical team told him to wear a cast and limit his movement for at least 2 weeks. He had roughly 24 hours until showtime. just from the chair, just with what he had. And RM, unable to use his feet, started moving his hands, his upper body, his whole energy. The way he moved, the way he smiled, the way he led his rap verses from that chair while holding eye contact with the crowd below him. Nothing about it looked like a man who was injured. What it looked like was a man who was completely, utterly present in the moment he'd been waiting for. Clips of RM moving from that chair went viral almost instantly. Tens of millions of views within days. Comments in Korean, English, Spanish, French, all saying the same thing. Incredible. But for the army watching more closely, the thing that hit hardest wasn't the movement. It was simply the fact that he was there at all. That he chose to be there. That was all Namjoon's call. Nobody forced it. And every single person watching, whether they were standing in Gwanghwamun Square or sitting on a couch in Jakarta or Sao Paulo or Paris, could feel that. A few weeks later, the Arirang World Tour officially opened at Goyang Stadium on April 9, 2026. 3 nights, around 44,000 people each night. 132,000 tickets sold out from the moment they went on sale. And this time, RM was fully recovered. The difference was impossible to miss. On a 360-degree stage, a setup designed so that fans from every single angle of the stadium felt equally close. RM moved like someone who had been saving everything up for exactly this moment. The rap lines that ARMY had only ever heard on studio recordings were suddenly lived, with a texture and weight that you simply cannot replicate in a speaker. When the surprise songs kicked in, DNA and Yet to Come dropped on night 2 with zero warning. The entire stadium erupted into one massive, synchronized sing-along. 44,000 voices becoming one. And in the middle of all that noise, there was a moment that made the whole stadium go quiet. RM stopped in the center of the stage. He looked out at the crowd, and he talked. Not about the new album, not about the tour numbers. He looked at 44,000 people and said, "This marks the beginning of our complete chapter 2. But the most important thing hasn't changed. The 7 of us have decided to stay together. Our sincerity in thinking of all of you has never changed." The stadium held its breath for 1 second. Then it erupted. People there described the sound as something physical, something you felt in your chest and through the floor. The way he moved, the way he smiled, the way he led his rap verses from that chair while holding eye contact with the crowd below him. Nothing about it looked like a man who was injured. What it looked like was a man who was completely, utterly present in the moment he'd been waiting for. Clips of RM moving from that chair went viral almost instantly. Tens of millions of views within days. Comments in Korean, English, Spanish, French, all saying the same thing. Incredible. But for the army watching more closely, the thing that hit hardest wasn't the movement. It was simply the fact that he was there at all. That he chose to be there. That was all Namjoon's call. Nobody forced it. And every single person watching, whether they were standing in Gwanghwamun Square or sitting on a couch in Jakarta or Sao Paulo or Paris, could feel that. A few weeks later, the Arirang World Tour officially opened at Goyang Stadium on April 9, 2026. 3 nights, around 44,000 people each night. 132,000 tickets sold out from the moment they went on sale. And this time, RM was fully recovered. The difference was impossible to miss. On a 360-degree stage, a setup designed so that fans from every single angle of the stadium felt equally close. RM moved like someone who had been saving everything up for exactly this moment. The rap lines that ARMY had only ever heard on studio recordings were suddenly lived, with a texture and weight that you simply cannot replicate in a speaker. When the surprise songs kicked in, DNA and Yet to Come dropped on night 2 with zero warning. The entire stadium erupted into one massive, synchronized sing-along. stadium held its breath for 1 second. Then it erupted. People there described the sound as something physical, something you felt in your chest and through the floor. To really understand why RM's presence on stage hits the way it does, though, you have to look at who he is when he steps off it. Because this is a man who in October 2025, months before the comeback, stood at the Apex CEO Summit in South Korea and addressed a room full of global business leaders. He stood there between executives and politicians and said, "I'm not a businessman. I'm just an artist. But I believe that art can transcend boundaries and unite many different voices into one powerful harmony." Then he described BTS's journey. How when they first tried to break into the global market, their music was dismissed as non-English foreign culture, and how ARMY from every corner of the world were the ones who eventually tore that wall down. That context matters, because when you watch RM on stage, you're not just watching a performer go through a set list. You're watching someone who genuinely believes every single word coming out of his mouth. He said before the concert that the answers he was looking for while making this album didn't come from the outside. They came from within. Listening more closely to our own voices and expressing our worries, anxieties, and even our confusion honestly. That was the goal behind this album. That's what ARMY feels when they watch him. Not a show. A person. You can't fake that. Look, we covered a lot today. The open cube stage that RM personally helped design, so the palace stayed visible. The opening words that stopped the world. The performance from a chair that proved charisma doesn't need 2 working feet to fill a room. The moment at Goyang when RM went quiet and 44,000 people went with him. The numbers that turned all of it into history. But the thing I keep coming back to is this. At the very end of the Gwangwaman concert, when BTS finally walked off stage and looked back one last time at the 100,000 people stretched across that historic square, there was something you could see on all their faces. Relief, accomplishment, something real. Their light shone brighter than it ever had before. And somewhere in that light was Namjoon, a man with a hurt ankle who still showed up. A man who, on the night before the biggest concert of his modern career, was sitting there making sure an ancient palace gate would still be visible to the world. A man who stood in a room full of CEOs and called himself just an artist, and then went and proved on stage why that was the most powerful thing he could possibly be. That's what left everyone speechless. Not the scale of the production,